I think it's live.
You will cut off your legs, your arms, and your head.
Yes, it looks like it's working, but I will just check the sound just because I'm that way inclined. Yes, the sound is working. Excellent. So thank you very much for signing in. If you have done, I'm now going to shoot over to the desktop view, which means clicking this button, and here I am. And then the desk. So right, here I am. It's a hot day here in the UK at the moment, and I'm streaming on the Goodman Games Twitch stream, as well as a couple of other different channels at the same time. And I'm going to be doing my usual tricks, which are the adventure writing style updates, where I'm putting an adventure together using the various different books from Goodman Games. So we have the Dungeon Alphabet. Dungeon Alphabet. I also have the Monster Alphabet, and I have the main Dungeon Crawl Classics book as well, which is this hefty tome. So it's an open game license game that was published in 2012, I think the first version, and they've regularly re-released new published copies of this every year with different covers and exciting occasional different new artwork. Otherwise it's pretty much the same game because it's stood the test of time. So what I've been doing is writing, if I switch this to the Raspberry Pi, I've been writing an adventure called, get to the top of it again, Beneath the Valley of the Ultranulls, and this is probably, I think, episode 13, where I've been filling out this Google Doc. So it's basically still in draft mode as an adventure for this game system, Dungeon Crawl Classics. And as I work, I use these as a tool set, these books, to basically produce the rooms in the dungeon and roll up on the tables in there. So last week I was doing some drawing. In fact, I'll skip down to where I was doing the drawing. Here it comes, the barrows. Approaching the barrows, and there we have it. So this is one of the first sections of the adventure where there's essentially a dungeon where it's inside a barrow mound, and it's in this location called Scarpsea. So if you have a look on the right of that map there, we have a place called Cliff's End, and above Cliff's End there's a small set of barrows. In fact, I need to update that chart, don't I? Because probably there's no seagulls, but I need to make sure that the barrows are labelled on that map as well, because I haven't sort of started labelling some of the more minor locations on there. So it's probably worth me doing another attempt at redrawing some areas on that. But last week I used a graphics pad, and I was basically drawing out some more interesting things for the dungeon. Obviously, the Goodman Games books, the adventure modules that they do, tend to have very gloriously detailed maps, some of them in colour, most of them in mono, sort of black and white, but they have drawings with various different artistic themes going around the dungeon. So my attempt at that was this last week. Obviously I'm not an artist, so essentially for the dungeon I put a kind of monolith thing in there with some art on the side of it and a dragon etched on the floor. So that's not a dragon encounter, but that's kind of like a carving on the floor to sort of fill out a purpose in the adventure as it works through. And yeah, that was my attempt to sort of do that last week. I use, and I always mention this, I use a system called One Page Dungeon. So it's worth me just jumping over to that. For some reason I've got a map that's arrived upside down there, but basically on One Page Dungeon, it's called waterboo.itch.io One Page Dungeon, and that's where I generate these dungeons. So if you pause this at this moment in time, you'll be able to check back and look up that website if you want to make your own sort of random dungeon like this. And the way I do that, because they're randomly generated, I just keep pressing enter on that page until I see a dungeon I like, and then I copy and paste it into the book. And all I did with this one was tidy it up a little bit more by doing a few more rooms and adding more numbers to rooms, because it doesn't always add numbers on every single room, and then obviously got stuck into the adventure. So I've just realised that my overview, which gives me the chat on the screen, is not appearing. And if I don't get the chat, I'll have people saying, "Hi, Robin," and I'll have absolutely no idea what they're saying. So just grab my mouse and get that technical situation sorted out. So I use OBS, by the way, which is called Open Broadcast System. It's a free application, runs on Mac and PC, and that's what I'm using for these chat boxes. I've just realised I put my video on top of the chat. Of course, the problem with that is that the chat needs to be on top of them. There you go. Jamie Long, please don't kill us, Mr. DM, sir. So there's Jamie. Jamie plays in one of my games, so thanks for saying hello, because it's always good knowing that there's someone out there in the world. So yeah, this last week actually, the players have been in a game called the Starless Sea. So, and Mark, hello Mark, thanks for saying hi. So yeah, we've been doing a classic adventure called A Starless Sea, which is like a chaos type adventure for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I'm running that. And they've got near to the end of it now, so they're likely to die. I laugh. And so yeah, hopefully Jamie heard that. So he fears the next move that he makes. So back to writing this. I've got the chat overlaid so people can say things now without me going wrong. Yeah, so in the OBS system, Open Broadcast System, which I'm using, I like to sort of tell you what I'm doing as well. Technology, you may notice that sort of showing things. You know, one thing I've got is that Raspberry Pi. There is a small single board computer, and I've got that connected up, and that's where I'm editing this document on. That's why if you have a look in the top left-hand corner there's a little Raspberry, because I'm running a version of Linux, and basically that sits on the tiny single board computer. They're very cheap, you know, in the sort of $30 to $50 mark, depending on which one you get, and you can then load software on there and use browsers. So that's why I've got this in action and wired into the broadcast system. So getting rid of that Raspberry Pi. I always like to mention Raspberry Pi, excellent little computers. So look them up, and they're very easy to get running as well. There's no complexities in like command line setup or anything. You just download an image on an SD card, boots up in 5 minutes, you'll be up and running. And they use HDMI output, so you can connect them into anything. Technical chat over. I'll show you the books again now and just talk about what I'm going to use in the books this week, because I've been doing a little bit of pre-prep. And yeah, so basically I want to get back to the dungeon again, and that means essentially looking at the last couple of scenes where they're in the base of that obelix. Probably fire that up as well again, actually. Scarp C, there it is. So the obelix is right in the middle there, and there's 2 dungeon floors. There's a roof, essentially 3, I suppose, because there's a rooftop where they can encounter these things called gullbats. That was the first thing I did the statistics for on episode 1, I think. And then as you work down, it gets slightly more deadly, but there's 2 floors in the dungeon. They meet a goddess on floor 1, which they could pick up as either a patron or a deity. And then on floor 2, there's a creature called a correctionist, which is like a mini sun. Basically, he's like a basketball-sized sun. He's what's been going wrong in there, because he's malfunctioned in some way, because he's sort of a construct of sorts that used to run the temple when the obelix was back in its old realm before it came into this one, and was transported here after a sort of battle between wizards, and arrived here dragging the goddess Idonaea with the temple and some of her worshippers and followers. And her followers are the namesake of the adventure, the Beneath the Valley of the Ultranulls. They are the Ultranulls in there. So I need to do stats for the Ultranulls in this session, and I need to do some statistics for this correctionist, which is like a sorcerer type overlord, even though it's a mini sun. And that's inspired from a book, if anybody's ever read any books by Hugh Cook. Sadly, I think he died of cancer about 5 or 6 years ago, but he did a series called, there was one called Wizards and the Warriors and Wordsmiths and the War Guild. Anyway, Hugh Cook's good books, and well worth having a look at. Anyway, there was a thing like a mini sun in there, so I was inspired by that. And I don't know if it was called The Correctionist, but it may well have been. So, although I can't remember. It's been ages. I haven't read those books by Hugh Cook for about 20 years or something, so it's just a vague memory. So Brandon has said, can you recommend a good guide to the Raspberry Pi? I haven't got any specific good guides. I did do a Raspberry Pi overview on my channel actually, where I built one, which showed me putting a case on there. But really, it needs those steps where you create the image is one of the things to sort of get you through it. But if I can find anything, I'll put them in the comments below and things anyway. So I may even do one myself. I could make it kind of gamer themed, couldn't I? You know, how to set up a Raspberry Pi for streaming plus, you know, gaming and what have you. Because they'll run retro games as well. So I often run those on there too. Right, so the books. What have I been doing? Well, I've been digging out to try and find how I'd create those ultra nulls. Even though I called them nulls, they're kind of temple worshippers that are beast men as well. So they're kind of slightly nullish, slightly beastmen, and they're going to have different heads and carry sort of swords and spears and things. So I've been looking through things in the main book, and it's worth mentioning the main Dungeon Crawl Classics book actually has some good monster creation ability in it. So you've got obviously a monster guide in there with your traditional goblins, orcs, and all of the everything in between, from trolls to oozes and things. But then the monster alphabet obviously is another additional book. It's not specifically written for Dungeon Crawl Classics, although it is by Goodman Games. So it's kind of independent of any system. So that's what's nice about it. If you're doing a Dungeons and Dragons adventure or anything, you could use the same thing. Or any OSR, which is the sort of old school Renaissance, you could use this too. So there's a very nice table in the first section there where you roll dice on there, and it's where they drop creates the monster. So that's one I'm going to use because it has this sort of ability where if you rolled on the head, you'd get lion, eagle, crocodile, rooster. You know, it's like a total combination of a beast that you can create on there. So I'll be using that table amongst others. And on the back, there's some bestial natures right at the back. The zoomorphic section here, and there's a bestial nature bit here where you rolled, and it says some kind of bird man. The humanoid's head's been replaced with an insect. So that ties in, interesting, that table right at the very back of this book ties in with this one in the front, because it's sort of similar concept of weird wings and arms and body parts. So you can have the arms of an ape, but you know, the body of a frog or something. Because I'm not doing mine, I'm basically humanoid, so I won't be going quite as wild when I do that. So yeah, so I've been digging through those things, and the other thing I wanted to do is at the start of the adventure, I haven't really got a proper intro encounter, you know, the sort of thing where you arrive on scene. I don't want to do the usual you're in and you see a signpost or something. So because in the tradition of the Goodman Games adventures, it's very much just everybody's around the table to get stuck into the game and have some fun. So you're suspending your disbelief a bit. Some people might call it railroading, but the problem with using a phrase for me like railroading is that, you know, you essentially railroaded people around the table already, haven't you? So they're all there for a reason, and there's a reasonable scope of a game is to try and keep people on some kind of mission or track. Otherwise, it can go a bit too loose. You know, some people like a complete freeform where the adventures players actually generate the adventure as they work through, and that can be fun. But in this instance, I'm trying to sort of focus people straight into the action. So I started with a picture, then I did an intro. I was trying to keep this on theme with how Dungeon Crawl Classics modules are written, so they're kind of having an intro where it says remember the 1980s. I adjusted this a little bit rather than just copying it straight out of their book. And then this adventure covers events around a giant black cube of rock called the Obelix. It appeared centuries ago in a large ravine within a sparsely populated wilderness region known as Scarp Seas. Of course, it can be placed anywhere. This adventure isn't designed to be set specifically anywhere. I've just sort of given the surrounds a slight introduction. And it's a huge Obelix obsidian monument in the middle. And just remind you that again, bring up the Scarp Sea map. There's the Obelix in the middle. And it's been there around 800 years. It's a distant memory, but people maybe first of all started to worship it And I've said in the region there's a mix of human, dwarf and halflings that farm and mine around the area. So actually in the north of this region, actually it's gone off the top of the map there, I haven't got it located on there well enough, but it's actually a dwarven outpost up there as well. Oh, you can see that if I go up to the top where the map is. And then you'll be able to see me point at it. Yeah, Coburnack is a dwarven outpost, so there's some trade between Coburnack and Cliff's End that comes via the Castus Falls. And there's a couple of buildings around Castus Falls. So I was going to do a trader outpost there, but again, that'll be for another session. There's also a Howling Tower up here with a mage in there. And I haven't done full details for that yet either. So getting stuck in, I shall dive down to where we've said an adventure background to do with the obelisk again. It's not clear if the locals, if the obelisk was there before the river eroded away the ravine, slowly revealing the massive obelisk, or if it arrived by some sort of magic. So of course there's a position in this environment in terms of understanding that all the locals are not aware how the obelisk got there. As far as they're concerned, it's been there so long, it's always been there. But as we explore, go through the adventure, players have got the opportunity to discover that yes, it was actually transported from somewhere else because of various things they might see as they work through the adventure. So I've got the barrows first, but actually I've got Cliff's End here, and what I haven't done is put any information about Cliff's End, and I thought this would be a good place for the players to arrive in and just sort of land into the adventure really. So if I just start typing something in here as I go. So I thought what I'd say is that there is a funeral. So, oops. So essentially, I'll just say as the group arrive for now. In Cliff's End, there's a lot of activity in the main village square. Which has a statue on a plinth. And I'm going to say the main, I'm going to say cobbled village square. So it's quite nicely looked after. So fill it in the centre. So the only thing I'd follow up with there is that it's clear layout's not great here because probably need to tidy it up, but essentially I'll have that as a normal section here. I just happen to dump in this small village map of Cliff's End with a square sort of in the middle. If I say as well that the is at the middle of the crossroads. Is at the roads. And if I remind myself of what that river's called, oh, it's called the Old Cass. It's at the middle of the crossroads, just up from the bridge over the Old Cass. The activity, a small crowd. Let's gather to see. So I'm going to call him Farmer Alk. A local farmer with a history with a large family. It's just outside here. if I just say to the east of Cliff's End. Just outside and to the east. Just repeating the name of the village, just for me as well, because I'll keep forgetting too. So if I just say, you know, as the funeral cart is dragged by a pair of ox. Is it ox or oxen? I don't know. I'll say ox. I'll say oxen. As it was a rabbit of oxen past the statue. So here we go. This is where I'm going to help myself with the book. So I know we've got a statue there. Statute. I want a note of what that statue is, so I'm going to dive over to the book and have a look in the dungeon alphabet to see if it will tell me the name of a and the details of a statue. So if I dive over to the desk for that, yeah, so this is the dungeon alphabet. They do various covers with this. This is a special edition they did with the sort of gold cover, and I think it's actually even leather bound. You can they really go to town on the production of these, and there's some nice artwork if you like this sort of retro artwork, which I'm a fan of there. That's Peter Mullen's art. So they've given it that old blue print style. So if I have a look in there, S for statues, it's page 59. I think I may have already labelled that as well, actually. So here we go, how to use this table. So basically, it's a case of rolling a d20. I need to get my dice out. So yeah, this is where I suddenly realised I need to get my dice tray out, otherwise it's going to go all over the place. So this I got on Etsy. These are fantastic, really nice solid wood dice trays. So they're both double as storage and a tray, so you can flip it open and keep all your favourite dice in there as well. So I've got some nice dice in there. Actually, I've just seen some D12s, and I know I need those D12s, but I will get that out of the way. Otherwise, you just need the tray. Yeah, Etsy's great for some sort of bits and pieces like dice towers, dice boxes and things. If you do a search for dice boxes, these are UK ones, and they do the different combinations of the woods like that, and you get to pick that when you buy them. For the life of me, I can't remember who I got it from, but if you do a search on Etsy for dice boxes, you'll see that. Anyway, so basically, there's a statue in the middle of this town's village square, and what I want to do is find out what... if I get that focus as well, it'll be a bit easier to see. That's blurring out, focused. So basically I roll here initially to find out what figure is depicted. So let's do that, got the tray. So we're going to go to 5. Oh, it's a child. Okay, well I can take it as it is. What's it made from? 6. Bronze. And what's the special properties? So yeah, it's going to have some special properties, why not? Even though they might not be apparent in this scene. 19. Statue's head eyes will follow the party movements. Someone or something may be observing them. So that's interesting. So we've got a child. It's going to be made of bronze, and it's going to look... So basically that will be a hint of a little bit of an interesting quirk in the rules there, in the sense that in the adventure, in that it will follow them, but no one else in the village necessarily see that. It's because they're new outsiders into the area. So I'm just going to write that down. Statue, child. I'll say it's like a young boy, and I'm going to now randomly make up the fact that it's got a bow pointed skyward, and also I'll say that there's like a young dragon or something curled around his feet. Curled around feet. And eyes follow party. Eyes follow party. So the adventurers are going to do that, and basically we'll need some kind of check on that as well to see whether they spot it and if anybody else in the village knows. And also I'm going to put an inscription on there, so I've marked out inscription here too. So I is for inscriptions. That's how these dungeon alphabets work. They basically have a page for each section in there. I've just been marking them out to make things easier. You know what, I think I could put more light on this. Oh, look at that. That's better. I might be able to get it in better focus too. That's blurring. That's pretty sharp. Yeah, you can almost read that. So let's get this out. Oh, so in this one there's 8 different inscriptions. Quite limited, I guess, but you know, that's fair enough. There's a few there. I'll get those D12s ready for the bit that I need to do shortly. Now dig through here forever to find the distinctive shape of a sharp D8. Here we go, let's roll it up. That wasn't a very good roll, was it? But 3. So crude graffiti, I don't think it's got crude graffiti because it's in the village, so I'm not going to use that one. It said it had crude graffiti. So 7. So a cryptic word is scribbled onto the pages. Here it is, now you can even see it. A cryptic word scribbled in the pages of an ordinary book. So Dindraig is having sound issues. I'm hoping that's not everybody's having sound issues. I'm going to do a sound check because I'm live streaming. But I've got my number 7 there for a cryptic word scribbled in the pages of an ordinary book. Yeah, Dindraig on Twitch, thanks for posting, and yes, it is being recorded. I think Goodman Games will save a copy and put it on their YouTube channel as well. But I'm just going to turn my audio up, see if I can hear myself coming back out of my speakers. And here we go. Yes, the sound is working, so the stream is operational. Get rid of the mouse now. Right, 7. Cryptic word scribbled in the page of an ordinary book works as a password, command word, or incantation in any other part of the dungeon. So there's going to be some sort of word on there. Okay. That's, of course, we're not in a dungeon, but I can link that to something else in the adventure. And maybe it's a password or something. Yeah, maybe it's a password that'll help them somewhere. So with the dragon theme, there's another dragon sort of in the adventure as well that comes later. So I might say that the word is the name of a dragon. In fact, I have that written down. I gave it a really complicated long dragon name, which I may change because it's so long. But there you go. That's it. It's going to have some sort of name of a dragon on there. And why not have it in a book, like a brass book at the foot of the dragon's face? Yeah, so we'll have that on there as well. So the whole thing's now together, like a book theme. Right. That's that done then. That's the, let me type that up. Let's see what time we've got. So I've still got like an hour left, so I've got plenty of time to get through this. Switch back over to, so again, just for, because I like to keep people in the know technically. Like I said earlier, I'm using a Raspberry Pi, which is what I'm using, doing the typing on. This keyboard's connected to the Raspberry Pi computer. As you can see over here, on my OBS session, which is Open Broadcast System, which I'm using to do the whole thing, the whole coordination of this switching, I have a box called a Stream Deck here, which gives me buttons. And there you can see Raspberry. I hit that, and then I'm over on my Raspberry Pi because I've set it up to show me a scene within my Open Broadcast System called Raspberry, which happens to then give me the input from my Raspberry Pi desktop, which you can see here. So the statue. So I say on closer inspection, the statue is made of bronze, weathered bronze, I say, and depicts a small boy carrying a drawing a bow. Drawing a bow to fire. into the sky. At his feet is a curled dragon, which makes the base of the boat. Statue with an open book beside the dragon's head. The book has some arcane text. Etched into it. Closure inspection. Thank you. Yeah. On closure inspection, that's an interesting one. Thanks for spotting it out. As the funeral is dragged, jumping back there past the statue. So just say a funeral cart So what I now need to do is just be sure that I've got this set up so as a read aloud here, and I want to try and keep the read aloud short, so I've been doing italic text for that. So as the group arrive in Clifton, there is a lot of activity in the main cobbled village square, which is a statue on a plinth in the centre. The village square is in the middle of the crossroads, just up from the stone bridge over the Cass. Over the old River Cass. Yeah, sometimes I catch them and then I go back to them later just because I'm piling on. So yeah, sorry about typos and stuff. Sometimes I miss because I'm like driving forward onto the next bit and then I forget what I was doing before, which is just no good at all. So that's the intro. There's a funeral cart is dragged by a pair of oxen past the statue, while with various onlookers, I like the word onlookers, in various states of grief. So that's that. So that's the statue on closer inspection. The statue is made. So basically I'll just highlight that. And I'll just say statue. So then we go on to the kind of shock moment. Momentary, a sudden cry goes up. Shouted, and the crowd part screaming. Some dropping to the floor. As something shoves its way through that. Followers. I could say procession, couldn't I? I'll just say followers for now. So here we have our first encounter of the game, essentially. Just getting them straight into it. They, in the classic sense of Dungeon Crawl Classics, there's no messing about. It's straight into the action. So I've been using a stat block here, which I just created by making a table inside Google Docs. And although mostly in OSR style games, old school Renaissance, people like the kind of really tight small stat blocks with the AC and everything written up. But since I was doing this online live, it helps my eyes really to be able to. There you go, I'd even written a note there, an event like a funeral is required within the village, so I'll delete that now because I'd actually prepared myself to say that something needs that. So yeah, go back up to this. I was just grabbing the stat block because I now need to do this creature that was the dead farmer. So the farmer, we called him randomly. I wrote that name instantly, Alkid Smark. So I'll just call it Alkid Smark. And he's an undead. So how am I going to do him? But it's basically, the premise was that Idanea is a goddess that's dying in that big central location in the obelisk there, and she's only got a few weeks left, which is kind of where this adventure sort of plays out. And there's two things. She's kind of entwined with the death of an ancient dragon that's up in the mountains as well, so that's another branch of the adventure that I haven't explored yet, but it would be like a next step of the adventure rather than the first one. However, because she's nearly dying, she's sending kind of like ripples of her death, you know, as her heart's beating in its last few throes. She was also a goddess of the gateway to the underworld, so she kind of, as people came through the gateway in her old realm, wherever she was from, which I've kind of gone for an Egyptian theme with that, she was helping people through to the afterlife and not judging them, but as like a guide. And because of that, as she's dying, she's kind of like sending ripples out amongst dead things in the region. So the barrows have got dead creatures around them, undead creatures, and this person that was on a funeral has just been awoken. And I was going to tie it in, perhaps now I've done that, there's a slightly magical statue in the village square. It's as they pass that statue, it's at this point in time that maybe they could make some kind of check to see whether they see that the statue's actually looking at them. Could even look as if it's pointing at them or moving its arrow in their direction as the beast runs at them as well, just as another kind of spooky hint there. So I need to come up with a kind of an undead for this. So what I'm going to do is switch back over to the books to find the undead section. There's one in the main book actually, so if I go back to there, there's actually a good section on undead in here, which I'd already got up. Variety in undead. So basically another Goodman Games sort of standard approach is, you know, don't go for the classic skeleton every time, you know, zombie every time that you'd normally see through your adventure games. Flavour them up a bit to give them a little bit more interest. So to start with, we know this is a freshly dead farmer anyway, but there's no harm in me rolling on a couple of these just to get a feel for it anyway. And there's some properties and physical appearance because he's going to have a special trait or two. So we'll get the dice table up again. Actually, I better go and check back over because I haven't got the Twitch chat up just to see that there's no one on Twitch chat going, hey, I've got an idea. I'm not seeing any of the chatter. Not seeing anything there at all, not even seeing my mouse pointer. No, what's going on with that? But move my mouse back over here, see if I get anything going. Yeah, there we go. So, let me show the chat. There's no one in there, unless it's over on a different screen. Oh no, there we go. Just Honor, sound is good for me. I think it's at my end, that's good. Okay, thanks for confirming, Just Honor, that the Twitch sound is running okay. That's handy to know. So I'll get back to the action. So I need to first roll a physical appearance of the undead on this table. There's 20 options. Obviously, one thing worth mentioning, I could always do these myself. I could come up with the fact that maybe he's a big old overweight farmer and his flesh is peeling off him, or it's just something weird like that. But I'd rather just roll here just to see what it gives me anyway. So 17. Oh, he's disemboweled. So that is quite interesting. So given that I said he was overweight, I'll use the disemboweled to say that perhaps as he runs towards them, he's kind of like that way that if someone's not been properly organised after they die, like the guts haven't been dealt with, his stomach bursts out as he runs through them, and the innards and the entrails splash out on the floor. On the cobbled floor, which sets a scream up amongst all the people. So we'll go for the fact that he's disemboweled, but it's actually his guts burst out as it runs at the player, so they've maybe got an opportunity to dodge to avoid a spray of horrible gore. And then his traits or properties, there's another table there, so I'll just roll on that. And that's a cocked dice. Oh, it's dropped on 4. Touch of Cold, 1d4 damage, immune to fire spells. So that'll be interesting. So he'll have a sort of frosty tinge, blue frosty tinge to his hands that he tries to grab the players. So if he does damage, because I'll pick a zombie stat block or something, he'll do an extra 1d4 damage as well from that cold touch. So the only other thing is maybe I could make the Bursting Guts also do damage. That's a possibility. And just realised I'd lost my pen. It's got rolled underneath somewhere. No, it hasn't. So always have like 30 pens to hand when you're doing a stream because you suddenly miss it. So Guts, 1d4 cold, and Bursting Guts on this farmer. Maybe he'll try and scream a word of help me or something as well. So now I need to find, if I go in there and find a zombie, I can use those stats, can't I? So I've got Troll and I've got a zombie at the back. So I'll use those as my base. So Walking Dead, they're difficult to kill. Immune to sleep, charm and paralysis, as well as other mental effects. They stand dumb and mute. They're slow and easy to win, but very difficult to kill. So he's going to be fast. He's going to run like a lunatic. He's kind of leapt up, realised he's half dead, half alive, and charges across towards the players through the crowd. So he's going to be a fast mover. So that will be something I change. But otherwise, I'll use what's on there. Just because it's like a hook into the adventure more than a major encounter. It's just a starter. Starter for 10. So go back over to the Raspberry Pi and I'll type in those stats and details. Yes. So here we go. So we can see all the usuals on here. So basically, the zombie has initiative minus 4, but I'm going to say this guy's super fast and quick. He's going to be chaotic. He's going to have AC the same as a zombie. It's going to be easy to kill relatively. And hit dice, they have 3d6, so yeah, that does make it a reasonable fight. And it's got down here movement of 40. I'm just going to say movement's 30 because these are these other undead that I'd written called the Huggers. And it's not going to have a thing called a grave hug. So I'll just clear that out. Now, action dice in Goodman Games Dungeon Crawl Classics, basically, if you have any more than one action dice, it means you can do 2 attacks. So in this instance, I'll just say that it's 1. Why not make him super fast, like he's brutal? 2d20, so we've got 2 attacks. And then I'll use the Fortitude, which is +4 for a zombie. So they are tough, so he is going to be tough. And the reflex though is -4, but we'll keep that on there. I don't know, I'll say it's -1 because he's slightly more agile than a slow-moving zombie. He's kind of got a passion to charge out here, and the will save is +2 for a zombie. Just type that in there too. I need to work out what the average is of 3d6. I don't have that to hand, so I'll just leave it blank for now. And then special is going to be Exploding Guts. I'll have it in here. That's spelled right. Right, so just move that over a tiny bit. Should start to, that's it. So Exploding Guts, claws +3, and let's see what the zombie's damage would normally be. Melee is +3 and it does 1d4, so actually it's similar. It's 1d4, and it's worth just saying as well, Cold Touch. It's not going to fit in there. Right, so that's him. So I'll just write our kid is a large farmer and has just been awoken by slow beating. I don't know. Yes, in the obelix. I'll just say he's primitive, oxygen starved, mind, head straight, in the town, in the village square. Had a fast pace. So I can write up the special things on here and just say I've been doing SP for special, undead and immune to sleep, charm, paralysis, spells, and cold damage. I just say on a special claw hit, honestly, Alkid will add 1d4 cold damage. And then also say he's exploding guts. Let's say that's his death throw. They have death throws in here actually. They have an interesting set of death throws in the back of the DCC book, but I'll say the exploding guts is the death throw. So I'll just say Alkid on reduction to 0 wounds. I'll say hits even. Alkid's large swollen guts will explode, covering in gore. And because this is done on Core Classics, really he's got to do some kind of like filthy disease or something to save on there. I would have thought. Sounds like a opportunity to roll on another kind of poison type or pestilence table. There's a couple of options like that in the monster alphabet. Let's have a look in there, just dive through and see if I can find anything on poisons. Or there's noxious. Let's go for noxious, page 48, and see what happens with that. Just like to make sure that I'm using these as much as possible. I mean, they were great books to get, but also only if you take the time to do stuff with them. But they're good for springboard of ideas. That's what I find. I get one idea from it, it turns into a dozen. So 9 noxious assaults. Oh, there's one there I don't even want to read aloud. It's too filthy. But I'm going to maybe use it. But here we go. Let's roll a d6, see what comes up. 3. Oh, look at that. It's perfect. A swollen bladder on the monster's chest is bursting with acrid liquid. So it can release the contents in a cone-shaped torrential geyser. So what I'm going to say, or geyser, however you want to call it, I'm going to say that's what happens when the stomach bursts. So this oily spray inflames mucous membranes with a concentrated extract equivalent to 1,000 chili peppers. Stunning or incapacitating all targets for 2d4 rounds. So, so it makes that's quite a tough thing, and actually also doesn't really do anything for because there's only one assailant. This is like the intro to the adventure. It's not going to really do an awful lot. But I might use that and say that something else happens. Let's have a look at ongoing damage. Until it's washed out. So yeah, I'm going to do ongoing damage. So Looking at the next page, there's a D12 to roll on there. Let's roll it. 10. A natural anticoagulant inflicting wounds that continue to damage the victims via blood loss. So like an acidic stomach acid. So yeah, until maybe they wash it off. So I'm going to say at the base of the statue, I'm going to say there's a small water feature that they may want to use to wash. Or a well or something in the village square as well, so they can charge over to that. So I'm not going to use the noxious assault, but I'm using the swollen bladder already because I've said the stomach explodes when he dies. But then I'm going to say that it's like an acid that does this anticoagulant, but rather than anticoagulant, I'll just say it's acid that just burns for every round. They take 1 hit point of damage, I think, something simple like that, until it's washed off. That will do the trick. So go back to the Raspberry Pi. So reduction to 0 hits our kids. Large swollen guts will explode, covering the party in gore. So I'll say he was a drinker of cider. And his intestines have turned to a acidic mush. I'm going to call it mucus mush. I meant intestines. Acidic mucus mush. Bad spelling. It's you. So on, say all players within 20 foot will be covered and take 1d4 acid damage, and on subsequent rounds one damage of acid burn. Now, the only thing I say is a reflex save of DC 14 will prevent the initial damage. However, small splashes of innards will continue to burn those that succeed the reflex until washed off. So I need to add another detail really, just to say essentially thanks for it. So I'll say behind the statue just say like it's very smooth move. As the cart passes the statue, and just as the cart passes the statue and heads on past the village well, commotion kicks off. So that's just given them the view that if you've read that aloud to them, they know there's a village well, so there's somewhere they can potentially dash to try and wash off the innards of our kid after he's exploded onto them, assuming they kill him and don't just restrain him on the floor or something. But then again, when he's restrained on the floor, you could, as a judge of this, you could just say he explodes anyway. Yeah, so there we go. Our kid is a large farmer and has just been awoken by the slow beating heart of iodine the god economic. His primitive oxygen-starved mind heads straight for the strangers in the village square at a fast pace. I haven't mentioned his blue hands, so physically I need to just mention what he looks like. So if I say as he charges the party, they can, I don't need to say that, do I? Just say here we go. Although moving fast, a large extended stomach. This is swollen out, and here both hands have a frosty blue hue to them. There, that works well, blue hue. So basically, a few more hints. Well, thanks, Mark, for hanging on, and for the tips and the pointers. That's appreciated. So, right, I've done the first encounter of the adventure then, really. Just basically, the introduction is the players will arrive in Cliffsend and get stuck straight in because there's a funeral and a mad dead farmer comes charging off the cart and heads to them. So, yes. Then I feel comfortable at the fact that I've just done an intro there. What I do need to do is another link between, okay, so that's happened, but what's going to happen now is that they need to maybe speak to the wife and family of them, or find someone else in the town that will guide them to the fact that there's an issue in the barrows as well. More dead have been coming back up. So we've said outside the barrows. This is again maybe the same night. In the moonlight, the party can see the large burial mounds, which are surrounded by small patches of barren-looking trees. So it's the Rocksmith family that they'll go to the tomb. So what I could do here is before the Cliffsend Barrows section, I could add maybe some rumours and things in the village to say that, you know, it's that Rocksmith family's tomb. Everybody says that they're cursed. Someone's meant to be locked in there forever and was cursed. So something along those lines, as I'll add them in here. So I'm going to write, because I want to get on with creating some more creatures in the last 20 or 30 minutes. I'll just say a note to myself on here to say, I'll just use the big font, note, hook to show 2 lead players to barrows. Local folk have rumours about the Rocksmith barrow. So that's basically going to give them a link on to doing the barrow, which I've actually completely detailed the barrow, and including the first encounter, which was these other types of undead called these huggers that drag you down into coffins if they run at you. So that was me trying to make a bit of a different undead again there, really, that they don't have a very strong attack, but the local villagers have called them huggers because they kind of drag you into a coffin by just sort of stamping their feet. They have that kind of magical ability to drag you down into some soft ground near a coffin. That's where they'll kind of drain your warmth from you when you're down there. So it's going to be a case of trying to dig these players out if they get stuck down by these. So that's those undead outside, and then I detailed inside the barrows as well, and every room in there has now been done. So I'm going to go back down to the Obelix. So just a reminder again, the Obelix is in the centre here, and it's the main dungeon of the adventure. So starting out at the Barrows, which is to the north of Cliff's End, where we've just had that undead encounter. They'd go to the Barrows potentially, or they could go straight to the Obelix, but the Barrows is the next obvious step to go. And once they got to the Obelix, we'll keep going down here. Have a drink. And there's a lot of detail on that, on those barrows now. It's filled up. So here we go. Handout, first floor of the Obelix. Oh no, that's not the first floor of the Obelix. That's the old barrow before I updated it. So yeah, basically on the top of the Obelix, it's a large obsidian rock. The top entrance is like a carved entrance set of stairs. So you can just sort of see that in the middle there. There's kind of carved stairs that go down, and these gullbacks are resting on the top of there, which are like sort of bats that swarm around. I guess they're a bit like mini pterodactyls or something, but I've called them gullbacks. They're more of a nuisance. But they have this guano strike dive bomb, which I've given them. And here's the level 1 of the Obelix. So here we go. So all of this has been detailed out, and various rooms. Won't go into it because they're all in the series. You can go back. There's like 13 episodes of this, so I don't want to like read through all of this again. Then I want to get down to the next floor. Oh, this was another undead that I made, the jade bones, which have kind of like beetles in their chest that fire and spit fire, acidic fire out. So it was to try and flavour up her skeleton a bit. And then Idinia, the goddess. One thing I want to do in a future episode is spend the whole hour and a half going through just trying to make her up as a deity in the. So basically, take a template out of one of the Goodman Games books where there's a deity already there, and then make it dedicated to her kind of skills in that she can obviously influence the dead because she's this gateway to the undead goddess. Plus, she's weak at the moment, so I've only done a weakened form of her. So when the players first encounter her, so there's a large humanoid is visible on its side, and it's just eyeballs on stalks with a brain and vascular system laid out, and in a human proportion stretched to an estimated size of 7 foot on its side. And they can also see the beating heart in the chest, a slowly beating heart in the chest, because she's dying as well there. But she will rise up and then have a conversation with the players. So the idea is that once I've done a bit where I've done the deity side of this, yeah, just on. I was thinking about a patron for her actually, because I was thinking that the players might have a wizard or someone in there that could use her as a patron. So probably do it as a patron, and that's where they can choose to either help her or they could go against her or whatever else could happen from there. So also it makes the adventure quite interesting, that it's worth having a look if you've got a deity in there, and I'll try and do that. But it needs a whole episode really dedicated to doing all of the various tables and things involved. There's quite a lot to do when you're building a deity or a patron. She could be both as well. She could be a patron and offer a cleric some sort of power too. So I've said here, plot options. Idaner may offer to be a patron or deity. So maybe I'll just stick to patron for one or more of the players. As part of entering a bargain plea for help, she can promise riches from her past life. Due to her being close to final expiration, I could just call that death. I've got brackets, death. Her powers are reduced. So I gave her some interesting stuff too, because I just revisit what stat block that I've got down there for her. So basically I gave her quite a lot of hit points. I've put 4 down there as well, but that's wrong. She's got 5d8 plus 4. She's got two actions. That could actually go up to 3, I think. She's also precognitive, so she's able to roll a d12 to confirm luck points at the start of a combat and use them to avoid damage. So because she knows about death and she's the gateway to death, I rolled that up in the monster manual, the monster alphabet, and it just gave her that ability to discard a luck point and then avoid any kind of damage coming in. And she also regenerates. And then she's got prestidigitation. I can never say that, it's a hard one to get out. So she can make items like weapons, armor, and small halflings disappear. This is an illusion, and the target must make a DC 12 will save, or the item or halfling will vanish, because I've said that she can do it to halflings. So she can also make things disappear. So, oh, and she can shoot fire bolts. So 6 times a day can shoot bolts of blue fire from her eyes that will cause 2d4 damage to any target within 30 foot. And she's got some basic spells, but I need to flesh that out when I do her as a proper patron. So she does have a weapon here as well in a magic chest, but I'll scoot on because I need to get down to the next level. And in particular this room 5 here. So I've done the temple entrance. I did a couple of weeks ago, I did a mounted horseman that charges at them if they don't have a password to get through a doorway. So here we are. So in the centre of the room can be seen 20 tall figures. They feature various dog and ugly twisted human faces and are currently in prayer, sitting in a circle around what looks like a mini sun hanging in the air above the middle of the room. They look tanned and leathery from basking in the mini sun's light. The mini sun is about the size of a basketball. I wasn't sure how else to say that, really. I could say about the size of a basket weaver's. A basket weaver's basket. I'll think of a better way to call that. I just didn't want to use a modern phrase, but why not? Been looking at a lot of different adventures recently and picked up a few of these sort of OSR ones, and I've seen a few where they use phrases like they'll say, you can smell something like burning plastic. And you think, well, there's no plastic in this fantasy world, so why would you smell it? But actually, it's quite good to use modern phrases, and why not say that it's the size of a basketball, because people will know instantly what that is, even though if you were being true to the fantasy setting, you might want to say, like I have here, it's more of a basket weaver's basket. But I'll leave it as that for now. I'll think about that a bit later on. And it's being worshipped by the Ultra Gnolls, and it's called the Correctionist. It's duty bound to protect and manage the behaviour of the Ultra Gnolls. However, it has now managed them through nearly 20 generations within the Oblex Temple and keeps their population under control. I'll say that too here. I'll just set to just 11 Gnolls. And I really should write 11 as well. It's originally duty being to feed, so I've said 20 tall figures, so I'm going to say 11 up here as well, as I don't want 20 on there. And now I'm going to do it's duty bound to protect and manage, so really I'm going to say now that I need to do a stat block for both the Gnolls and the Correctionist. I think I've only really got time to do one, so I'm going to do the Ultra Gnolls because they are the namesake of the adventure. So I need to find a stat block, which I should have picked one up really to copy into there. Oh, there's one not too far away. So that's going to pop in there and should be good. So basically the Correctionist will tell the Gnolls to fight the people that are coming in the room, in other words the players. And I need to find something suitable for this in terms of stats and things. These are obviously not, I don't have a horse kick. I was thinking of giving them 2 actions, but I see this is a apparent. At the moment, I'm sort of aiming at potentially either 2nd or 3rd level, and probably if it was 3rd level adventure, 1 attack's probably enough for them. But let's go and find a Gnoll anyway. Need to find the book and have a look in the main book. Let's get that up. Desk. So at the back, I think we've got what I was thinking of using, which is basically just for general strength and size. I was thinking of using Hobgoblin. Well, let's come out of focus a bit there, so we can see that nice and close. So Hobgoblin, basically they have swords, they have good armor. These guys I could give them reasonable armor as well, scale mail to make them tough. And yeah, they have 1d20, 1 attack basically, 1 action dice. And that's a reasonable thing to use, although I'll have the description will be obviously that these things are almost like beastmen with like maybe a raven's head and various other Egyptian themed, a bull head, a raven's head, an ibis head, maybe a few things like that, which I can look and roll on as well. And also I might pick a few other things, like I was looking in here earlier, you've got a berserker. And the berserker has an ability where it gets +2 to attack. So I was thinking they might go into a berserk rage as well, because they've never seen any foreign people in here. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll pick that there, and I'll write up that for the. I'll use a modified hobgoblin. So basically, they have hobgoblins have initiative of +2. These guys will be neutral because they have just sort of been worshipping this sun here. They don't have any true sort of good or evil alignment in terms of chaotic or lawful. Actually, no, they're going to be lawful. They're going to be lawful, and so will the correctionist, the like mini sun as well. And they're not going to have an AC of 18. They're going to have an AC with. They're going to have sort of chain on. So I'm going to give them AC 14, and I'll give them the normal, the 1d8 +2, which is the hit dice for those, and the movement will be 30 foot. So we'll say that they've got swords along with their chain mail. And number 2 S's there. And the hobgoblins themselves normally have a +2 melee, so we'll give them +2 as well. It's going to make them, they're going to say +3. They're going to give them +3. Then I will take the standards for these, which are Fortitude +1, Reflex 1, Will -1. And Will -1. Not very strong-willed, just been following this sun for centuries here. And hobgoblins are interestingly are lawful as well. You know, that's always been a trait of them, hasn't it? That they'll be kind of the overseers for and they're kind of Roman legion style, aren't they? Hobgoblins is quite often depicted in quite neat suits of armor. Although these aren't hobgoblins, they'll follow that same theme. They're kind of worshipping down here. And yeah, so that's the Ultra Gnolls. So the only thing I need to do is maybe give them some special features because they are sort of ancient worshippers down here. And I did think about giving them that berserk, just to sort of say that they really do go wild when they see the players. So a berserker, so after wounding, undergoes battle madness. So they'll all kind of, maybe that's where they will transform. So they'll start out maybe looking humanoid, but when they get a wound, they suddenly burst out with their bull head or raven head or lion head or jackal headed. Okay, so that's it. So that's going to be the special, isn't it? And really I need to get rid of those damage things there because they're not going to have that. Second attack, they have just got a sword. Oh, and the damage is 1d8 +2 for them using a sword. So let me get my book out of the way so I can type this properly. Right, typing failure. Thump. Right, so the Ultra Gnolls are 6 foot tall, muscle humans with 6 female and 5 male. So I'll just say, although sitting cross and worshipping the mini sun, they look ready. Chain shirts, quilted battle skirts, I call them. In other words, kilts. And belted swords and sword scabbards at their sides. And this is where I'll say again, so I've said sitting room will look like mini. So I'm going to say in the sitting room, 11 tall figures, they feature, and I'll just say that's where I need to put that as a read aloud. And I probably need to shift this whole section here into the read aloud, because that makes more sense as they come in and see them on there. And I don't want to like hint at this moment that they do have. So can we see 11 tall figures? And then I'll get rid of the dog cat. They're currently in prayer, sitting in a circle, and it looks like a mini sun. They look tanned and leathery from basking in the sun's light. Then I'll say, although sitting cross-legged and worshipping the mini sun, they look ready for battle with chain shirts, quilted battle skirts, kilts, and sword scabbards by their side. So that is the read aloud. The mini sun is about the size of a basket weaver's basket, and being worshipped by the Octronals is cool. Tidy that up, get rid of that. Let's go for actually. It's duty bound to protect and manage the behaviour of the Octronals, so yeah, that's fine. So this is where I'm going to say the special is Berserk here. I'll just write Berserk. Won't quite make that Berserk go in that box, and then it squashed everything else up. This is the worst thing for a live stream, is to be resizing tables. I'll leave it as it is for now. So I'll just say Berserk SP for special Berserk. Berserker Rage. After the Octronal takes damage, his eyes will flare with a red light, and a wild rage in its body, with muscles rippling, faces deforming into the shape of beasts. So yes, so it's going to be a surprise scene. Makes it a little bit more interesting. I'll just say deformed into the shape of beast, so that basically when they take some damage they then rage, and then they take on these mythological sort of beast heads and things like that as well. But I do need to just look up what that does again, that Berserker Rage, and I'll just explain that. in the main Goodman Games book on page 433, a berserker. So they fight normally until wounded. When wounded, they undergo battle merges. They gain +5 hit points and +2 to all attacks, damage, and saving throws while in combat. So I'll just scribble that down there. So I'll say they gain +5 wounds. I'll just say hit points, use the right terminology. And a +2 attacks, damage, saving throws. After one turn, this madness phase fades. They then lose the extra hit points. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make this a bit tougher. I'm going to say after 2 turns. So they still retain the beast heads. The madness phase, they lose and they lose the extra points. They lose the extra hit points. Well, they still do it. If they have taken more hits than their base hit points, they die. After the rage fades. There we go. So they're berserkers. But you know, that's going to be quite a fight down there really in terms of what they meet. And yeah, I've kind of run out of time now to do the mini sun correctionist, which is going to have some fiery effects. I also thought maybe you could try and heal, which would kind of draw the players to want to hit it, because it would potentially be healing. So I could have a kind of a beam of light coming out that's restoring the you know, points of damage on the ultra nulls as they fight, which could then turn the players to say, right, we need to take out that correctionist mini sun because it's causing problems there. And also I was going to give the mini sun a kind of Achilles heel that, you know, water or ice or something does extra damage to it because it is a sun. So that's it. Okay. So if I go back to here, just say, well, thank you very much for listening in. This has been Robin Fitton doing a stream on creating an adventure, and we're getting there. I've nearly done the whole lot. I mean, there's still lots of details to do and edits and more playtesting, but we're nearly working through. That reminds me, I haven't done the wizard yet that the players could also encounter, that has a kind of influence on what wants to happen in the actual obelisk at the centre of the adventure as well. But that's it. It's been fun, and thank you for listening. And if you have, and thanks to Just Honor that came up with the idea to make Idenia a patron. So I need to do a whole session really like this, where I just create the patron from her and give her some abilities to really give us some flavour, and also it kind of like binds the adventure together to have a proper new patron in there as well, that people can gain patronage from and get all the special abilities and things that comes with that, which would then maybe make the fight against the Ultra Nulls a bit more something they can be capable of if they've got that. Or even just her help, because she could give them a temporary patronage to help her out in the adventure. But thanks again for listening. If you have done, I'll stop the stream now and say thanks for listening. Goodbye.